Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis. I'm Carol Watson, she, her, hers, and I'm so glad to see each and every one of you here this morning. I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers. And if you're new to our congregation, take a moment, fill out a newcomer form in the link at the chat window. Be sure to stay for virtual coffee hour at the end of the service, and you can visit with a small group who will welcome you. We're excited that our minister, the Reverend Kim Mason, is back in the pulpit today. She will return for the Water Communion Sunday, also our homecoming on September 13th. Just a few points of orientation. The order of service, including the music notes and the yellow page of the church news, is available at the link in your chat window, as well as on the church website and the e-news. And if you don't receive our e-news, please comment in the chat box. We'll get in touch with you. We also want to remind you that recordings of these services, closed caption, are posted every Sunday afternoon on the church YouTube channel. And this Tuesday from 12 to 1 is the first of several opportunities to participate in our drive-by water communion ritual. And we're going to have that in the church parking lot. Check the e-news for additional days and times, and don't forget to send an email about the source of your water to Reverend Kim by September 9th. Please note that there will be no children's chapel today, but look for upcoming RE events in September in the e-news. Today's also our first virtual newcomer chat. At 11:30 a.m., we'll post an announcement to all the breakout rooms and invite any visitors to return to the main Zoom session for a chance to chat with Reverend Kim and the membership committee. We're continuing to hold our weekly socially distanced and with masks vigil in support of Black Lives Matter. All are welcome to join us at 10 o'clock each Saturday, the intersection of Waterman Boulevard and Kings Highway, right beside the church. More details also in the e-news. And we extend a special thank you to our virtual worship team this morning. Thanks to George Grimm Howell, who is our producer, Larry Dusenberry is our chat monitor, and Greg Holtzel is our video monitor. Now, since one of the most important aspects of worship is being present in community, we invite you to take a moment, turn on your webcams, and wave to each other. Just switch to the gallery view so you can see everyone at once. We're keeping everyone muted, but feel free to type your greetings in the Zoom chat. It's good to see everyone. Now, please turn off your webcams again and feel free to return to speaker view. I'd like to welcome you again to our religious community. We affirm the dignity and the freedom of all who enter. Here we seek to live together in relationship and respect so that we may embrace and celebrate our differences. Our religious values invite us to a shared journey of truth and meaning. Sincerity and connection guide our religious community and call us into deeper association with ourselves and our world. We are glad you are part of this community this morning. Now please join our prelude, Antiphon 3 by Marcel Dupré, performed by our own organist, Earl Naylor.
beautiful, soothing piece to begin the morning with. Good morning. My name is Kim Mason, she, her, hers, and I serve this congregation as your minister. It is so good to be with you this morning. I invite you into this space, this Zoom sanctuary. Here in this space exists the infinite possibility of connection and the virtual reality of relationship that brings into being each week the wholeness of our present reality. Here, in this space, we can hold the unfathomable blessings and the infinity of loss, both of which are the incalculable gifts of being alive. And we can say, we have room for more. The shared drive of our communal experience has an ever-expanding capacity. In this time, in this space, we make new meaning, forge new networks, and discover that here too, among the ones and the zeros of the internet, grace exists. Come, let us worship together. Please join us in our opening hymn, number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build a common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each true thing we learn, for fearful hearts and past, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Our chalice lighting words today are from Reverend Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit. And so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is love. There is a love holding us. And there is a love holding us all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love.
The God by Becky Brooks. This story doesn't have any pictures, and that's on purpose. I think you'll understand in just a moment. Once upon a time, there was a teensy weensy, itsy bitsy, very small God named Tiny. Tiny lived life hearing stories of all the big gods. And, well, Tiny was jealous. Tiny wanted to think of some kind of special spark of an idea that would make their small existence meaningful. After watching humans for a long time, Tiny hit upon something that just might work. Something to make people think, yeah, that Tiny has really got a good idea. Are you ready? Here it is. You are not alone. Tiny took this idea and made themselves into a very light breeze. And in a voice so quiet, each person heard it only in their mind, Tiny said, "You are not alone. You are not alone." People loved it. It was perfect because who doesn't want to hear that? Pretty soon, Tiny was comforting people all over with, "You are not alone." Every evening, Tiny took the form of a breeze and whispered it in people's minds. Until one day, Tiny encountered someone who wasn't comforted at all. When Miriam heard Tiny's words in her mind, instead of feeling comforted, she felt agitated. Something was just kind of off about it. She kept saying to herself over and over again, "You are not alone. You are not alone." She tossed and turned. She couldn't sleep. In the morning, Miriam went to read the paper, and instead of skimming everything, she found herself drinking in each story. She was only halfway through when she found herself crying, "I am not alone. I am connected to every one of these people. They live in my town and my country and my world. They love their children like I love mine. They're scared sometimes, and so am I. They hurt like I hurt. I am not alone. I can help." Tiny was surprised. It hadn't occurred to Tiny that someone might think of it that way. Tiny kept watch over Miriam to monitor this interesting development. Miriam and a co-worker met online in a meeting and talked about a law they hoped the Senate would pass. And Tiny noticed when Miriam wrote a letter to her senator about it right away. Tiny noticed that when Miriam turned in her grocery order, she bought a few extra things for her neighbor and left them with a colorful note on their porch. Tiny watched as Miriam wrote postcards to friends and family near and far, waved to the dog walkers who passed by her house, and strung up colorful lights in her living room. But most importantly for Tiny was when Miriam received a phone call one evening from a friend she hadn't heard from in a long while. His voice was shaking. "I'm having a hard time," he said. He started to tell her about his troubles, and he broke down crying. Miriam got herself comfortable. "Take your time. You are not alone. I am here. I am here." Tiny heard those words like an echo. You are not alone. I am here. You are not alone. I am here. You can say it at home too. Say it with me. You are not alone. I am here. In that moment, Tiny knew that they were nothing without Miriam's hands and heart and spirit. And Tiny knew that what the world needed more than anything was what Miriam had learned to give. So Tiny went to work. Instead of just spending evenings spreading the gospel of you are not alone, Tiny spent night times doing it too, and mornings and afternoons. Pretty soon, Tiny was spending every moment doing it, until they became the breeze itself. And that is why there are no paintings of Tiny, no pictures, no busts or holy books, just a breeze, a low voice, and many, many helping hands, loving hearts, and caring spirits. You can hear the echo if you listen closely. You are not alone. I am here. When people gather to protest injustice, you are not alone. I am here. At the bedside of a dying friend, you are not alone. I am here. In the jailhouse and the sanctuary, in the school and at home, you are not alone. I am here. Separate and together, you are not alone. I am here. May it be so. One of the ways that we let people know that they are not alone is through the sharing of joys and concerns. Let us pause now in a moment of quiet reflection. I invite you to type any sorrows or concerns you are experiencing into the group chat. And they will be shared. Sadness over the loss of Charlie Kindleberger. Two friends battling cancer. Remembering a friend at home. And prayers for a friend struggling with cancer. A cousin who died this week from COPD. More sadness over Charlie's death. And sadness at the death of actor Chadwick Boseman. Worry for students, parents, and teachers. Concern for all education workers. Much love to Joan and Lisa and Charlie Kindleberger's family and friends. Prayers for extended family peace and healing thoughts for the officer shot yesterday in Tower Grove. Missing Charlie. Love to Joan and her family. Prayers for those protesting the racial violence in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Worry for protesters dealing with vigilantes. We hold these sorrows with tenderness and compassion. May they be lighter because they are shared. As a community, we also share our joys with one another. I invite you now to type any joys you wish to share into the group chat box. Monarch butterflies emerging from chrysalises. Gratitude for the opportunity to participate in a Black Lives Matter vigil. Gratitude for this glorious morning. A son starting a hospital internship for his divinity studies at Star King. Joy that the Tour de France is happening. Joy in a walk in Forest Park on a beautiful morning. Apple cinnamon scones. Joy in retirement and a chance to travel for a son's birthday. Pleasure in a mild August. Pleasure over being able to offer absentee ballots for an African American friend and her family. Gratitude to have a chance to have a class in person. Gratitude to have a classroom from the safety of home. Gratitude that a sibling is able to communicate. Gratitude for a son starting kindergarten and loving it. Excitement for the new year. Joy in getting interviewed for a friend's video blog. Appreciation for a beautiful morning jog in the park. Gratitude for the support that we receive each time that we show up on Saturday mornings for our Black Lives Matter vigil. Celebrating an aunt who turned 99 on Wednesday. and several thanks and gratitude that I have returned from my summer away, and I will say I am also glad to be back with you. We hold these joys with gladness and celebration. May they be magnified because they are shared. With many joys and sorrows remaining in our hearts and minds, please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life and love, holy within and among us. We are tired. Our souls feel worn with the loss and isolation of this pandemic. Our hearts are breaking with the continued violence against brown and Black people in our country. We worry about the destruction from wildfires in California and hurricanes on the Gulf Coast. Our hopes for the summer were abandoned, and now we find ourselves in an uncertain fall. In embracing the unknown, we are unmoored, a little bit adrift. Spirit of life and love, holy mystery, help us to remember that we are not alone. Help us to find joy in the beautiful natural world around us. Help us to remember all the ways that we show up for one another, giving and receiving in turn. Help us to remember that we have the power to effect change. Let this community be an anchor in a sea of uncertainty. Let these people be the support we each, one another needs. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Please join in our sung prayer, Spirit of Life.
Our first reading today is entitled These Days by Reverend Lynn Unger. Anyone who tells you not to be afraid should have their head examined. Cities are burning, hillsides are burning, and the dumpster fire of our common life is out of control. I wish I could tell you when it was going to get better. I wish I could promise that better was anywhere down this road. I miss dancing, bodies in something between conversation and flight. I miss singing, the way we trusted the air that moved between us. I miss the casual assumption that everything will be all right in the morning. These days, I'm trying to be buoyed by the smallest things. A ripe tomato, a smattering of rain, These days, I am trying to remember that songs of lamentation are still songs.
It is the mission of the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis to provide a hospitable sanctuary in this time and place for people to seek sources of spiritual strength and to encourage people in the church and in the world to work for love, decency, tolerance, and justice. In this time of pandemic, the church continues in that mission. The building is closed, but the church is open. We are not passing a physical plate, but there are many ways to donate, including by mail, online, or with our Text to Give program. These are uncertain times. Please give as you can.
Dona nobis pacem, pacem. Dona nobis 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 pacem, 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 pacem. Dona nobis pacem.
I recently had a COVID scare. A combination of symptoms sent me seeking a COVID test and then self-quarantining until my results came in. I rescheduled a planned move. I had my groceries delivered. I stayed inside and I had to say no to important pastoral visits. After about 4 days, I had a list of things I'd forgotten at the grocery store. I was desperate to take a walk around the neighborhood, and a beloved congregant had died. Then a kind friend texted me, "How are you doing? Let me bring you some soup." It was a simple kindness that said, "You are not alone." I am glad to report that 2 days after that, I got my negative COVID results. I share this story because the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is real for each of us. We have been struggling with this virus as a nation for 6 months now. And with it, we have been faced with the intersecting epidemics of racism and poverty. In grappling with how to respond to this coronavirus perfect storm, we find ourselves facing a myriad of losses. Some of us have had the virus and lost our health. Some of us have lost friends and loved ones. Some of us have compromised immune systems and lost our freedom of movement. Some of us have lost jobs and economic well-being. Some of us lost the chance to celebrate major milestones and accomplishments. Some of us lost needed support and connections. Some of us lost hope as the virus disproportionately impacts Brown and Black communities. Together, we have lost our sense of ease and, as a nation, our feeling of invincibility. We have yet to beat this virus, and we find our feelings of shared experience and communal strength marred by divisive language and inadequate support. The losses are great and small, physical and emotional. And there's not just one. There are so many, named and unnameable. So amorphous that we won't be able to quite describe what we have been through until it is all over. And we find ourselves wondering, when will it be over? Friends, I grieve with you. Because that is what we're doing. We're grieving. As this pandemic began, we thought more than we felt. We thought we could get through this with safety precautions and flattening the curve by staying home. We worked busily to shift life online and put energy into juggling every aspect of living within our spaces. We were trying so hard to stay positive. We were so determined to survive that pausing to grieve hasn't been very high on our agenda. And the sheer magnitude of over 175,000 deaths has been both incomprehensible and stupefying. The losses are so numerous and so varied that it's important that we start to grieve before we lose track of them. So instead of ignoring our feelings, instead of reasoning our way through, I invite you to feel. Dr. Alan Wolfelt of the Center for Loss in Fort Collins, Colorado says, "We live in a mourning avoidant culture. As such, we seek to intellectualize our grief, to put order and structure to it, to think our way through it. There is," he says, "a problem in allowing oneself to feel and express deep feelings. Some people struggle with a high need for self-control. Others may have an intolerance for experiences of disorder and confusion, accompanied by pain and helplessness, while others may lack a support system that encourages the expression of their feelings." Oof. That hits a little close to home right now. We are literally living through a moment in history with high levels of disorder, confusion, and helplessness. The rising death toll is being minimized on a national level, and self-control is being expressed as a debate around whether or not you can require someone to wear a mask. Our nation is grieving, and we're not quite sure how to express it. I am a champion intellectualizer, and it makes my head and heart hurt. Trying to think our way through grief is a form of minimization. It suppresses our grief. It leaves it to come out in unhealthy ways, in negative coping mechanisms, or surprising outbursts when we least expect it. And it isn't just the intellectual mindset that promotes a stoic response to grief. Many religious traditions have a history that prioritizes ritual over emotion, belief over connection, that says it was meant to be, or we just have to let go. Buddhism is one such tradition where early interpretations suggest that we grieve because of our attachments. The story of Kisa Gotami and the mustard seeds is a traditional one. A mother so devastated by the death of her son and subsequent loss of her social status that she carries her son's body with her through town, seeking a cure, a way to bring him back to life. The Buddha offers to heal her son if she can find just three mustard seeds from a house that has not been touched by loss. Kisa Gotami visits neighbor after neighbor, unable to find a house touched by loss. Thus she comes to her senses, buries her son, and returns to the Buddha and asks to become a nun. The traditional interpretation of this story is that by letting go of our attachments, we become enlightened and we stop grieving. But what if there is a different interpretation? What if the story of Kisa Gotami and the mustard seeds isn't one of letting go, but of the universality of grief? The antidote to intellectualization and non-attachment says, felt, is to reverse this trend that fails to acknowledge the need for compassion and support. Supporting people in grief is about love. It is not about logic. Soto Zen priest Domyo Burke offers us a different story to contrast that of Kisa Gotami. When Satsujo, a great disciple of Hakuin, was old, she lost her granddaughter, which grieved her very much. An old man from the neighborhood came and admonished her. "Why are you wailing so much? If people hear this, they'll all say, 'The old lady once studied with Hakuin and was enlightened. So now why is she mourning her granddaughter so much? You ought to lighten up a bit.' Satsujo glared at her neighbor and scolded him. 'You bald-headed fool, what do you know? My tears and weeping are better for my granddaughter than incense, flowers, and lamps.' The old man left without a word. Our job as humans is to find the healthy ways to acknowledge grief, so that by doing so, we may find our way to our deeper selves and a more authentic being. Our tears are better than hollow positivity, if only because they give life to future possibilities. The acceptance of grief, making it possible to move through it, not ignoring it. Psychiatrist M. Scott Peck said, "The truth is that our finest moments are most likely to occur when we are feeling deeply uncomfortable, unhappy, or unfulfilled. For it is only in such moments, propelled by our discomfort, that we are likely to step out of our ruts and start searching for different ways or truer answers." Living through this COVID-19 pandemic is requiring that we step out of our ruts and search for different ways and truer answers. We begin today by acknowledging the universality of loss and allowing this community to serve as the container for our shared grief. By acknowledging all we have lost, by naming the cost to our hearts and souls, we embrace honesty with all we have experienced in 2020. By allowing ourselves to mourn, we engage health so that we are ready when the time calls for our creative reconnection with life. Let our tears water a new future so that together we might make a new future and build a world of love, decency, tolerance, and justice. Buddhist Roshi Joan Halifax said, "A friend can bear witness and shine light into the darkness of our suffering, and in this way help us to learn to swim in the waters of sorrow." Our job as humans is to find the healthy ways to acknowledge and accept grief. In a moment, I am going to turn to my Buddha board. It is inspired by the Zen idea of living in the moment. It is blank right now. And I'm going to invite you each to type the losses of 2020 into the chat box. Our worship team will read these words aloud. And for each loss, I will let a drop of water fall on the board. The board will hold our shared grief. And as the water evaporates, release it. I invite you now to share the loss or losses you are holding.
Charlie Kindleberger. Spontaneity. A missed medical school graduation and wedding of our son. Loss of spending time with grandchildren and children. My faith in the strength of our democracy. Hugs. Being with my preschool special education students. Loss of our beloved cat, Inky. Hugs with loved ones. Missing my friends, especially Bob. Loss of a dear friend recently. Empathy overcome by divisiveness in our nation. My cousin, Stephanie. the death of an adult former foster child, the safety of my life due to neurotoxin and the loss of my tolerable socks, hugging kids and grandchildren, physical connection with friends and family, sadness about not being able to visit my best friend who has a recurrence of cancer, loss of a 25-year marriage by divorce, missed family reunion, loss of time with family and friends, confidence, optimism, a family vacation, hanging out freely with friends, live music experiences, faith in endurance of our country, the difficulty for an extroverted son, my aunt, loss of ceremonies, loss of birthdays, graduations, and funerals, not being able to see my mother, father, brothers, or sister, sharing a meal in a restaurant, in-person grad school, service learning trip to Guatemala, and time with family and friends, and a relationship. Loss of the illusion of a safe neighborhood. Seeing my daughter. Concerts and movies. Fear for our future. Losses of powerful icons, Kobe Bryant, John Lewis, Naya Rivera, Chadwick Boseman. A long-planned trip to France. Death of my granddaughter and loss of being together. School in person. Loss of a family member. My cousin, John. The missed opportunity to visit our new grandchild. Having friends inside for dinner. Singing together with our group. Sadness of the state of our government. Visits with my dear friend. Not being able to hug friends and family. Strained personal relationships over our political divisions. Not being together with family and friends, loss of planned summer trips and concern for our future, just the uncertainty of it all. And the loss of visits with our children due to travel restrictions for 7 months. Thank you all for sharing those.
Shared community. May the universality of our loss bring us deeper to our shared humanity and remind us all that we are not alone.
Our second reading this morning is a prayer for when words fail by Reverend Leslie Takahashi. This is a prayer for when words fail, for when they are not big enough or small enough to slip into the little cracks left in our hearts by life's unbearable pressures. This is a prayer for when the biggest noun cannot know the enormity of joy, or when the most active verb is paralyzed in the face of grief unuttered, horror undescribed, or loss beyond accounting. This is a prayer for when words, precious emblems though they are, cannot take into their embrace the hugeness of experience, or the expanse of indebtedness, or the many tangles of complexity and confusion. This is a prayer for when we must sit with our breath, needing the small truths we can touch, as if they were therapy for our restless hands. This is a prayer for all who have known the large void of hope that is trauma. This is a prayer for wounded hearts and bodies, for those whom we ought to always remember and sometimes choose to forget. This is a prayer that begins with gratitude for what we can understand and know, and ends with humility, which reminds us that not all is ours to do. This is a prayer for those times when words fail, and all is left is the yes and the no of it all, and our ability to let the cord of breath lead us from this moment to the next. This is a prayer for all who have been lost, that in our memory they may be found. May we be the ones to make it so.
When peace like a river attended my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever, my Lord, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well.
Friends, you are not alone. And so we close our service today by singing Alone and Together, the iconic song of the civil rights movement, We Shall Overcome. This song signifies both an acknowledgement of hardship and a determination to persevere. As we live through this lost summer, we seek once again to come to grips with police violence on an unarmed Black man, making this song never more pertinent. Please join us in our closing hymn, the hymn of the month for August, 169, We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall all be free someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday.
Our closing words come from the Reverend Nancy Reed McKee, and you may recognize them from last week's service. Our community knows no boundaries. We are not confined by the physical limits of walls, or, for that matter, of what often binds us, restricts us, holds us back. You are free. We are freer than we know when we release ourselves and each other from expectations of what is needed for true community. We are here. together in this space. I see you. I hear you. I love you. Go in peace. Amen and blessed be.